New York Bio is pleased to present Vision Talks from our 2021 annual meeting. Here's Where Do We Go From Here, delivered by Dennis Purcell, talking about the future of the biotech industry, sponsored by JP Morgan and introduced by Susan Crinian.
Hi, everyone. So as Jennifer said, I'm Sue Crinian. I've spent my entire career at JP Morgan, and in a stroke of genius in 2016, when they were launching a commercial banking team to cover life sciences exclusively, I raised my hand and said, I want to do that. And I've met the most incredible people. Derek Brand was one of the first people when I started trying to learn the scene in New York. And it's been really a lot of fun. In 2017, I was at an eLabs pitch day, and Dennis Purcell sat down in the row next to me, saw my JP Morgan name tag, and said he started the conference at H&Q. So that was my first intro to Dennis. So if you didn't know that H&Q started the healthcare conference that is now known as JPM, he told me today that it started with 10 to 15 companies presenting for a half a day with 50 attendees. And they were early stage up and coming companies. So it's changed a little bit. And Dennis left there after the acquisition by JP Morgan. So Dennis's background was started in investment banking at Payne Weber. And another thing I learned today, that his own personal journey with cancer led him to move his investment banking focus into the healthcare space and lead Payne Weber's practice and move over to H&Q, and then from there, after the acquisition of H&Q, to found Aisling Capital, which is now on its fifth fund and over $2 billion assets under management and over 100 portfolio companies. And Dennis is he's had numerous accolades, including Biotech All-Stars list by Forbes and Biotech Hall of Fame by Genentech Engineering. I think you'll find him very humble of a human being, and he's on many private and public company boards now, and I'm going to turn it over to him. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Sue. Is this on? Oh, is it okay? Great. I want to talk about the industry as a whole a little bit this afternoon. I mean, we've been through many booms and busts, and when times are good, they're really good, and when they're tough, they're pretty tough. But it's been so long since we've been through a bust that maybe we've really forgotten what it's like. So as we go through this boom, I think it's a good time to consider what the future of the industry might look like. While things are good, the industry is flush with cash right now, and we have the ability to reflect on where we want to go. This boom is probably the longest stretch of time in history that we've had good times in biotech. When we come back here in 10 years, what will we be proud of, what we've done with our resources and our opportunities? Now's a good time, I think, to think about some of the issues that the industry could address. I suggest two broad scenarios, visions for the industry that will positively affect the most amount of people, have a broad economic impact on healthcare costs, show the leadership that the industry has, and keep us, as we are today, one of the more admired industries in the country. The first scenario has to do with the indications that we will pursue. And the second scenario has to do with the responsibility we have to society. First, the indications. Right now, the industry puts most of its R&D investment into cancer and rare diseases. That's the easiest kind of path to market currently. But will those indications really generate the greatest improvements in overall public health? Let me suggest 3 other areas that in the next 10 years could make a big difference for our innovation in public health. First, mental health. It's a huge issue for the country and has intensified, as we know, during the last 2 years due to COVID. Studies show that the cost of mental health costs almost $250 billion a year to us. Just some perspective. 100,000 people died of addiction last year. 80,000 died of diabetes and 50 from kidney disease. 25% of all adults have at least one mental illness. This is an area of extreme importance, I think. Second indication is the field of longevity. It's an industry that's just emerging, but it's going to grow exponentially in the next decade. We now talk about health span, not just lifespan. Soon, 120 is going to be the new 100. Babies born today have well over a 50% chance of living past 100. And people living longer are going to have vast implications on society. The science is evolving rapidly. Senescent cells can be removed, the rate of decline of telomeres can be extended, the rate of decline can be extended, the role of mitochondria is becoming more important. 50 possible biomarkers of aging have already been identified, and they're being investigated. In addition to our contributions as the life sciences industry, other issues other than medications will become critical in this field. You need me? Okay. I could put you to sleep and start over. With longevity, other issues other than drugs are going to become important. Housing, healthcare aids, financial issues, loneliness, physical activities will become issues that affect each one of us personally and society. The third indication I hope we prioritize is a renewed focus on chronic diseases. The definition of a chronic disease is that in the last year or more, a person requires ongoing medical attention or limits the activities of daily living, or both. 60% of all adults, 60% of all adults have at least one chronic disease. 40% have at least two chronic diseases or more. It's estimated that chronic diseases directly, indirectly, or opportunity costs cost our country $4 trillion a year. It's 20% of GDP. We, by and large, have neglected these diseases as an industry. 80% of all approvals last year were cancer and rare diseases. And cancer and rare diseases are the 2 most prevalent indications in our pharma pipelines. So I hope when we meet in 10 years, the indications of mental health, longevity, and chronic diseases will have gotten the attention they deserve and need from our industry. My second scenario relates to our responsibility to society as a whole. Here also I have 3 hopes. First, to the science. Science is moving so quickly it's hard to keep up. PD-1s, CAR-Ts, Tregs. We just heard about gene therapies right before this, gene editing, incredible advances that have only accelerated in the past decade. Discoveries are being turned into drugs with technologies we couldn't even dream of 20 years ago. We need to explain to the public where this is all heading and what it means. What is germline editing? What is somatic cell editing? What's the difference? Does it affect evolution? What obligations do we have? A quick analogy. In the year 2007, the following events occurred in 1 year. Facebook began operations at a college dorm. Google bought YouTube. The internet crossed 1 billion users. A computer called Watson arrived. Twitter was spun out of its parent company, all in 1 year, year 2007. Remarkable achievements, but now we ask ourselves, have these companies become too large, too powerful, too invasive? At the beginning of this industry, we never considered these questions. And because of the financial crisis in 2008, these events were not particularly scrutinized or the implications to society thought through. We're feeling those effects today. We read them on the front pages of the newspapers. Let's not wait 10 years to answer the questions that our science will affect us all. Let's be transparent. Second, I hope that we engage the entire healthcare system to rethink the system. We know it's broken. We've gone from 6% to 18% of GDP without noticeably better outcomes. Some would argue worse outcomes. Many countries match or exceed our metrics with far less cost. The administrative burden alone is enormous. Duke University Hospital, for example, has 900 beds, and they have 1,200 billing clerks. And actually, the majority of these healthcare costs over the last decades have come outside the industry. But if you poll average Americans, they believe the majority of the increase in healthcare comes from the drug industry. We need to engage the entire system and help rethink it. Lastly, I'd like to see better engagement with the whole payer chain. 75% of the people that use private insurance use either Aetna, Cigna, or United. And those three own their own PBMs, their own pharmacies, and for the last years have been consolidating vertically and horizontally. And we need to work with them to come up with a shared sense of what is our value. What value are we providing? The new Alzheimer's drug by Biogen will cost $56,000, and that's considered a fair price by them. ICER believes the fair value of that drug is $5,000. Same thing with the PCSK9 inhibitors to treat serious cholesterol disease. The industry thought we were delivering $14,000 of value. The payers thought it was $4,000 of value. We need to start to understand what the real value is we're delivering. We've started this process by doing something called value-based contracts, where you only pay for what works. Consumers expect our products to work, and we can do more since we only have a small type of these kind of contracts, and there's much room for innovation. So I hope that when we meet in 10 years, that we're fully engaged with the public, number one, with the science as the science progresses, that we play a role, number two, in addressing the problems of the whole healthcare system, and three, we've worked with all the various constituencies to ensure quality, equality, access, and fair prices. The innovation and visions of the next 10 years will come from unexpected places. Tesla didn't arise from GM or Ford. SpaceX didn't come from Boeing. Amazon didn't come from Walmart. Facebook's not a subsidiary of ABC. Our industry is the future of the innovation. Walter Isaacson, in his new book, The Deal Breaker, said the first half of the 20th century was the physics-related evolution based on Albert Einstein's paper of relativity and quantum theory. The second half of this 20th century was the information technology and digital revolution, where information could be coded into binary bits. The first half of this century he calls a scientific or biotech revolution, where technology such as CRISPR will allow us to personalize medicine and edit our own genes. I started with the hope that what the industry will accomplish in the next 10 years. We want to positively affect the most number of people. We want to have a broad economic impact on healthcare costs. We want to show leadership to society. And we want to do that as we remain one of the most admired industries in the country. I've outlined two possible scenarios to do that. The first is to focus our efforts on such things as mental health, longevity, chronic diseases. The second addresses our responsibility to society. Our efforts here should be transparent and communicative about what's happening to the science. We want to participate in the rethinking of the entire healthcare system, and lastly, engage all the constituencies to ensure drugs are accessible and affordable. Thanks.
Thank you to Dennis Purcell, Susan Crinian, and our sponsors at JP Morgan. This has been a New York Bio Vision Talk.